Welcome back to the Paradigm Project. We are here today with a guest host, Michael, and our guest, who is Quiana. She's absolutely wonderful. She is a Paradigm alumni, and we're just going to kind of talk about teenage empowerment and some really awesome stuff with that. So, Quiana, can you start by telling us a little bit about your experience at Paradigm?
Awesome. So, I first started going to Paradigm like 10, 11 years ago, and I wasn't here for my freshman year, but I was here for like the rest of it. And Paradigm was like, it was a very like formative like experience for me, and it was like home. I was able to really learn a lot about myself and about developing ideas and like developing as a person. So I was a little bit of a wild card when I went here. I don't know if it still is in the dress code, but it used to be that they had to specifically ban cloaks from the dress code. That was a big part of it. That was my fault, because I dressed like a hobbit every single day, and I was that kid. You know, I was kind of a little bit weird, a little bit kooky. And I'm still a little bit weird and a little bit kooky, but I don't wear a cloak everywhere I go. Now it's like a steampunk like trench coat.
Oh,
that's what I tend
amazing.
to. But
good stuff.
Yeah.
It's Paradigm, home of the nerds.
Right.
Yep.
We like weird and kooky.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about what you've kind of been doing since then. When did you graduate, and what's been going on in the middle?
So I graduated about 2015, and since then I've been doing a lot of things. I was a motivational speaker and founded a company that focused on self-help and empowering teenagers. I have written and published a couple of books. I served for about 18 months for like an ecclesiastical thing. I've worked in various space centers and doing a lot of different like acting gigs around the state. And I also write simulations and present at conferences and other like symposiums and things like that about writing and other things, I guess.
Right.
So,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Mm.
I love everything you do. You're fantastic. Anyways, so that's a little bit of some of the things that you've done. What are some of the things that you're doing right now?
Right now, I'm focusing on writing. Like, you know, that's where I've hit the ground running, and I'm just doing that full time. Since like the beginning of August, I've written maybe 2.5 books, and we're working on getting those polished up and figuring out a way to publish them. I'm going to be speaking at LTUE, which is a writers symposium, on the 15th through 17th, I believe.
Awesome.
So I know that I went there as a field trip for Paradigm stuff.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So,
yeah.
like, if you're there, you'll see me, because they put me on a lot of stuff this year.
I love that. What are the names of your books if our listeners want to check them out?
Okay, so right now I have one book that is published, and it is titled My Brother is Human. And you can find it at dramaticpress.com. So it's like dramatic, but dramatic. And I'm sure you'll put in a link or something.
We can put a link down below for everybody to check that out. That's fantastic. And what is it about? Can you give us a little summary?
Basically, imagine what would have happened if Bruce Wayne had been adopted by the Kents.
Oh, I love that.
So,
Ooh, I'm a big DC fan.
Oh,
that's
so good.
Yeah.
High quality. If we could circle back around to some of those organizations that you've been a part of with teenage empowerment, could you tell us a little bit more about those?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest one, and the one I've been a part of the longest, is Heroic Youth, which has had a lot of different names over the years. Yeah. And it's been done a lot of different things. But it originally started as a big simulation for boys 8 to 12 years old, and then all of the volunteers who helped them were youth. Of course, primarily boy youth.
Right.
Men youth.
Yeah.
All of the variety. And I don't know, I really wanted to be super heavily involved. I wanted to have a sword and go into battle and do stuff, but they were like, no, you can't. There's no, but I wanted to, so I created something very similar for girls, and then eventually that was kind of adopted by the other group, and now it's all kind of meshed together in theirs.
Right.
And and that is frequently referred to as Summit.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Oh, it's good stuff.
So, and I founded that when I was 15. So
that's fantastic.
So, yeah, that was when I was 15.
Yeah.
And
teenage empowerment.
Oh, yeah. It was I was really into doing stuff.
Yeah. I get that. I said, I don't do anything at all ever.
No,
Yeah, no,
that's-
never
that's-
ever. And I've been a part of Summit for a couple years, and it is genuinely a fantastic environment where people are able to express themselves and go and have fun with other teenagers and learn skills and learn how to be a leader in that kind of a situation. So definitely, teenage empowerment. Go us.
I've been involved as well. It's
Oh,
fantastic.
nice.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So what does teenage empowerment mean to you? We've been kind of talking about it in abstract terms. What is it, and why do you feel it's important?
So I have a very different answer than the one that I would have given as a teenager and as one that I would have given attending here. Right now, today, teenage empowerment to me means being able to understand yourself, like especially as a teenager, and be able to act on that regardless of the expectations or the assumptions of everyone else in your life, like, so adults, other teenagers, etc. And I guess I would have said the same thing, but it means something like a way different to me now.
Right.
Like way different.
Right.
Huh.
Can you go a little bit more into, because you say that it means something different, but you'd be saying something similar. What do you mean specifically by that? What would some of your teenage, like, deep down, what you mean,
So when I was a teenager, I was really focused on teenage empowerment and doing all this stuff. That's why I became, like, a motivational speaker and got really involved in, like, the self-help industry. Now I don't have a great relationship with the self-help industry, which is why I'm not a part of it anymore. But I was so, like, there was, like, this really big culture that I was entrenched in as a teenager that was very like, do big things, be big, change the world, do these massive projects and all of this, just be big and no one can stop you from being big and go do it. And I was so focused on that there were a lot of core elements of myself that I neglected because I wasn't focused on actually doing what I needed to be doing. It was what I thought other people would like, and with a couple of big exceptions. And because of that, because I'd like neglected that and just focused on what I felt like other people wanted me to become and like, be that big, impactful, change the world person, there are a lot of things that I didn't experience as a teenager, and I'm having to go back and do it now, like as an adult. And I'm having to have like a rebellious phase, I guess, because I didn't have that as a teenager. Like I didn't have that because I just wanted to please everyone around me and change the world and be like the goodest kid and the best kid. And my parents were awesome, but I just kind of like misinterpreted a lot of what they said because I took their you can do big things and you can change the world into I must do big things and I must change the world. So
that's really interesting.
That's a super interesting
Oh
element.
goodness. I'm curious your thoughts on a good way to influence people in teenage empowerment, because you'd think that saying, you can do everything and you can be this amazing person would be influencing in a good way, but if it influences you in a way where you're like, oh, I have to be, what's a way that you think people could switch, or I don't know how to phrase this question.
I get what you're saying.
How they can like interact with the concept
interacting with the concept in a healthy way. There we go.
Interacting with the concept in a healthy way. Yeah. I think that a lot of it comes down to, how you interact with individuals, because each individual is going to like need something different, and each individual teen is going to be on their own path and they're going to need to hear different things. Right. And so I think just avoiding big blanket statements, honestly, and avoiding these big blanket expectations for not just teenagers, but also like yourself. And that's something that we get caught up in a lot, is like these big blanket expectations, and like every culture does it, but especially this one.
Amen.
We're always go. You gotta do everything.
Yeah. And so I think like, just stepping back and like working with the people around you and seeing what they need and encouraging them to participate in things that will help with whatever they're going through. It's like really touchy. It's really touchy. There's no right answer.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think that, actually, going back to something that we were talking about in our last episode with mental health, we talked about how success is often more prominent when people have that safe environment to be free to express themselves and be individuals. So I feel like that's the same thing with teenage empowerment and with that growth, is that you have to be able to have that environment where you are safe to be an individual and where you are safe to express and where you are safe to fail at things and get back up and do it well. You know?
Yeah. I think one of the most dangerous things you can tell a teenager who's trying to figure, or not just a teenager, but like anyone, but like especially teenagers, is it's just a phase, you'll outgrow it.
No.
Because first of all, it's probably true because we all go through phases. We all go through stuff. But as soon as you say that, like any communication is just shut down.
Right.
It's like gone, and they will not come back. You know, teenagers will not come back to you because if they're willing to like let you know about something that, you know, like is likely to be dismissed and you then dismiss them, it's very difficult to recover from that.
Right. We want everyone's experiences and development. Every bit of that is very important.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And to dismiss any of it will definitely, I think, dismiss a part of that development.
Yeah.
And it's even if you experience something and you pass on from that and you are now a different person, you are that different person because of the experience you had.
Yeah.
So it might be a phase, but it is a phase that made you who you are.
And it's like really important. And yeah, because I went through a lot of phases, obviously. I went like the phase where I wore a cloak every day to school and, you know, like had carried around a copy of The Way of Kings and the Constitution of America on me at all times. Like
That's amazing.
I've got
I
half
love
of that. I have multiple pocket constitutions with me
Now
all
we
the
just
time.
gotta
It's
get you a
fine.
copy of The Way of Kings.
There you go.
Yeah, but like if I were to go like travel back in time and as myself, like look myself in the eyes and say, hey kid, that's just a phase, you'll grow out of it, would have been devastating. Don't do that to it. Don't do that.
I'm curious what you think about being able to change your past. I know that that's something that people talk about a lot, and they're like, you know, if you could go back and change one thing you did in your life, what would you change? And my answer is I don't want to change it. You know, there's some stuff that sucks, right? And there's some stuff that's really great, and there's some stuff that's mediocre, but it's all part of what makes me who I am and what makes me have the ideas that I've had and what helps me be successful and what empowers me as a person, you know? And so what is your thought on being able to change things, or if there's a phase that, that exists that you're like, oh, that's yeah.
I don't think I would like change anything per se, but I would like to have like a talk with my high school self. And there are a couple things that pieces of advice that no one ever gave me, but I wish they'd given me. I would have told myself to stop taking myself so seriously, and I would have told myself, listen, like you're smart, but you're not as smart as you think you are. Calm down a little bit. And then other like stuff about romantic stuff, I would have been like, listen, you're dumping way too much energy into this. Like it's gonna be okay. Like just take a chill pill. But I don't think I would change anything that happened, if that makes sense. I would have given myself tools to maybe make a little bit better choices and have more to stew on. But I don't think I would want to directly change anything because I've read too much sci-fi. Like I'm something's going to go wrong.
Amen. Hallelujah. I'm curious, kind of on that same vein, I'm curious what you think about how people's experiences can empower them, especially for teenagers, and how they can, instead of having to look back and say, oh my gosh, there's this advice that I would have liked to have, being able to say in the moment, how can I be aware of myself and how can I let my own circumstances empower me?
Well, I think that the best approach that I've found is instead of like beating myself up for, you know, not being a perfect teenager, because no one is. Like
right. Amen and all.
Yeah.
Oh
no one is. Like everyone goes and is like looks back at all the cringy stuff they did, because like, and that's why I love teenagers so much, is because you're just going through and you're experiencing so many things for the first time.
Right.
And I love it. But like recognizing that and becoming the kind of person that you needed when you were a teen. And that applies for like when you are a teenager, when you're an adult, like whatever, just looking back at yourself and your mistakes and like, okay, what kind of person should I have had in my life? Like what kind of person would have helped? And then just try to be that person.
Right.
And then because there are other kids like you, there are other people.
Right.
it just, I found that's the best approach.
Definitely. It's
Amen.
so easy to feel alone as a teenager, I think.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Um, but yeah, I think a significant element of empowerment is knowing that there are other people who are like you going through the same things.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Oh my goodness, yes. I think that that's something that is so important for all of our listeners and all of us in this room and everybody really to remember is that, I mean, you're not alone, you know? And we all go through stuff. Nobody's perfect. Nobody has this beautiful life with no trials, you know? And I think that in itself can be one of the most empowering things is not saying, "Oh my gosh, I got to get rid of this trial." It's saying, "I'm not the only person in this trial." And I know that because other people have had this random stuff going on to them, you know, I know that because of they've been able to get through stuff that I can too. And having that feeling of not being alone is so empowering.
Yeah. I think one of the wackiest things that has happened to me, especially like recently, is like I had like a really close friend group growing up, and some of them attended Paradigm, some of them didn't. But we're all really close, and like we recently found out that we had all been going through a very similar thing, like a very, very similar thing, and none of us told anybody else. We'd all been experiencing the same thing, going through this, and we told nobody. And now we're just now like coming back together and like and reconnecting and being like, oh my goodness, we all went through this. We're all going through this at the exact same time, and we didn't tell anybody.
Right.
Like no one knew. But yeah, you're not alone. It sure feels like that. Holy cow.
Yeah.
It sure feels
My
like
goodness.
that.
I'm curious, kind of going off of that a little bit. I'm curious, how do you know if you've reached empowerment and kind of what are some of the tools or sources that you can use to get there?
I don't think that empowerment is something that you like reach or arrive at.
Okay.
I think it's like a fluctuating thing, and there are moments in your life where you are empowered and there are moments where you're not. Like, and that just is constantly shifting and changing, sometimes day by day, sometimes even hour by hour, sometimes, you know, like it varies. But I think that the moments where you are at peace with yourself and you are deliberate with everything that you're taking, with every action that you're taking, and you are taking those actions because you know they are the right thing to do.
Right.
Like when you're doing something and the only reason you're doing it is because it's the right thing to do, I think that is the pinnacle of empowerment.
I love that so
Right.
much.
I think empowerment constantly evolves.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you were talking about phases earlier and how we can't say, oh, it's just a phase, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think nearly every decision we make is to some degree empowerment. When we make a decision, we're giving ourselves the resolve and the belief that we can do the thing that we're deciding to do. As a teenager, we're doing so many new things, we're experiencing so many new things that every time we make a decision, it somehow has just a little more gravity.
Yeah.
Right.
I really like that phrasing. I really like gravity.
That's interesting.
I
I'm
like gravity.
curious, is empowerment a state? Is it an attitude? Or is it like the actions that you're doing? Or is it a combination? I mean, I would think that it's
like
a combination.
all of them. Yeah.
But we've kind of talked about it in a sense of, you know, you're doing stuff and you're doing it because you know it's right. But what if you think you're doing something right and you feel confident about it, but it isn't necessarily right? Would that still be empowered? Are there multiple kinds of being empowered?
I think it would still be empowerment because like of just the mindset that you're in, because there are a lot of things that I did. Even when I listed off my accomplishments, there are some of them that I consider to be not good things that I did, but I did them, but because I was very convinced that I was doing the right thing. And now looking back, I'm like, oh, that was not the right thing to do. But I still, even though I wasn't doing what was right, I was doing what was empowering.
Right.
So you can be very empowered and be not making the right decisions and hurting other people. It's on a totally different scale from like morality and stuff like that.
We were kind of looking at Ender's Game before this.
Ah, yes.
And in Ender's Game, there's the example of Peter Wiggin, Ender's brother. And he definitely, especially when has this online alias of Locke.
Locke, yeah.
He makes a lot of actions and he makes a lot of really strategic decisions that are very empowering for him, but not for the right reasons by any means. And that's an interesting character arc, I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if you look at Ender himself, and you look at, I mean, he was empowered. He had a lot of things going on, and he went through a lot of trials as well, like we were talking about earlier, but he persevered through all of the stuff that he was going through, and he was still being as effective as he could be in his circumstances. Now, of course, there are a lot of really interesting things that go on in that book.
Are
and
we doing spoilers?
I don't, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, spoiler alert. But I'd love to talk about kind of how his empowerment was abused, because he thought that he was just there with the people around him, and he was doing, you know, the video games and training and things like that, and he thought he was just being effective in a good manner, but really he was, like, you know, massacring a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And not people, but
Well,
still
and
people. In a sense.
massacring
They
a
were-
bunch
they were-
of living things.
Mhm.
How about that?
Living
In
things
theory.
with
Kind of. Yeah,
sentient
there we go.
beings.
Yeah.
I like that.
Something like that. But let's talk about that. How, because there are good types of empowerment. There are types of empowerment that may or may not be good, but that produce good, or that produce not good, you know? But I feel like a lot of the times, especially younger minds, can be abused in that sense, and that
Yes.
them thinking they're doing good things
Yes.
is very much not.
Yes, and I experienced this as a teenager as well, where people took advantage of the fact that teenagers will do anything, like will do and will not expect compensation for it. And there were several, there was, I won't name it by name because I'm going to be trash talking a little bit. But there was like a big event for teenagers that was happening, and there was like a team made to help create these simulations and stuff, and it was all teens, and we just worked our tails off, and we worked so hard, and there were people who were paid, but it was not us. It was not us. We were not paid a single penny, and we crafted the experience and the simulation and everything. Like, we were taken advantage of. And that happens a lot, where people will use teenagers for free labor because, like, teenagers are so you tend to be really, you want to do the right thing, and you want to do it for the right reasons, and that can be taken advantage of. And a lot of our mental health got really run into the ground during that experience.
Right.
So
How can we combat that? First of all, of course, there are older listeners that can help, because oftentimes they'll be the ones in power that are making that type of decision.
Yeah.
But how do we as teenagers make sure that we are empowered in healthy ways that actually helps our communities and helps ourselves, rather than being taken advantage of like that situation?
That's tricky. I think just look at what you're doing, and look at if someone else would be getting paid for it if they were doing it. And if they would, if there was an adult doing your job and they'd be getting paid for it, then try to make sure you get some sort of compensation. And also, that's the big one for me, like when it comes to like money and whatever. But they're just, and also like just find adults who you trust, and they can help you kind of figure out who is working to take advantage of you and who is not. And I had, and of course, like, when I was a teenager, I had adults like that in my life, and I did not listen to them, and I got taken advantage of a lot by other adults, especially in the self-help industry. But yeah, like, just if someone tells you that you're being taken advantage of, you probably are. And just find a way to, like, get out of that situation.
Right. Because it's important, like, as far as teenage empowerment, it's so important for us as individuals to be empowered and to learn how to manage ourselves, manage other people, and manage skills and life and interacting in society, because we are the next adults. And if the adults, or heck, anybody around us, are abusing our empowerment or our skills or our minds in any way, they are impacting the future of our society. We as teenagers are the people who are going to be changing lives, you know? And heck, who are changing lives right now. There are plenty of teenagers that are experiencing empowerment in a very healthy way and who are doing a lot of good in the world. But it's so important to be aware of your surroundings, aware of yourself, and aware of the balance that you have in society.
Yeah. Because teenagers have a massive, massive, massive influence. You are the movers and shakers, and you have no idea how much money you are moving around constantly just by the things that you are interested in and the people you follow online. You have no idea how much money you are moving around just by existing. And when that is like used to intentionally and on purpose, like it can be absolutely devastating in both a good and a bad way. You guys have no idea. No idea. And you probably won't until you become an adult, and then you find yourself frantically trying to keep up with all the things that teenagers are doing. And
Amen.
you have no idea how much money you're moving.
My mind goes back to a lot of examples in history of teenagers having a massive influence on current events. I read Wild Swans fairly recently, and something that occurs through the duration of that book is the Cultural Revolution, where Chairman Mao utilizes the youth as kind of a political tool, as almost a weapon. And in that sense, it's crazy how much we can do. I think teenagers and youth in general is associated with a lot of vigor and a lot of enthusiasm, and a lot of willingness, like you said, to do anything, to try and do the right thing. And sometimes that may not actually be the right thing. There's so much power within each of us that I don't think many people realize. And especially when you're a kid where you feel constantly belittled.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes. That's an interesting thing that I had an experience with recently at a workplace that I had. Was I'd been working there for a while, and so I knew the systems, I knew the computers, I knew how to do stuff, you know. And I had originally been hired on as just a part-time person who, you know, just helped with miscellaneous things. But by the end of it, I knew a lot of stuff, and they ended up being short-staffed a lot of the time, so I got some of the higher-up powers. But it was very interesting to me to see the balance between the different places that I would work, because I would work a couple different locations, and the different management I would work with, and the different tasks that I'd be doing, because I felt like towards the end of it, since I was, you know, still a minor and I'm still young, they still think I'm a kid sometimes, right? And so on occasion, I would just be sitting there and be like, yes, you can do this one thing that's like super simple job because it's super easy, whatever, cool to do that. Or there would be certain times when we would be crazy busy and they'd just like hand me a bunch of people to take care of because I knew what I was doing. You know, I could do it in the computer. I could take care of all of these logs and do all of the checking out and whatever, you know? And I felt like there wasn't a balance between my abilities and their view of me, because half the time they would use my abilities and say, yes, we're going to pretend you're an adult right now and give you all of this stuff to do, because I could, you know, and then the rest of the time they'd say, well, you're young, so we're going to treat you like a child, you know, and there wasn't really that balance. So it's so important to, as teenagers and people in general, watch that and say, am I being used for my skills, or am I in an environment where I feel safe and where I feel like I am valued, that I am wanted here, that I am being productive, and that I'm not just kind of like half the time treated like a child, half the time treated like an adult, but not getting compensated for it.
Yeah. And like going back to Chairman Mao and how he used teenagers, like teenagers are often like a major tool that adults will use to get what they want, whether it be for their influence or for their skills or whatever, because you can, you know, get all the work out of them, out of you, and still, like, and because you're so young and inexperienced, like, not like, well, yes, you are inexperienced, and that can be a major advantage. That can be a major advantage, and you can do things that like no one else would even think about doing because you don't know that you can't, and so you do it.
Right.
And adults will use that to their advantage all the time. So all the time. And they'll use it in political senses, they'll use it in monetary senses, they'll use it. It's kind of scary, but yeah.
Yeah, I think because of that. Okay, I'm going to bring this into a different question that I've kind of been thinking about. So we've talked a lot about the dynamics between adults and either children or teenagers. How is that? We've talked a little bit on how it's used. How can it be used in a more effective and empowering way?
Ooh, that's a very good question. I wish that I had the answer to that. I think that, first of all, adults need to be better. Adults need to be better and, like, stop being so selfish. And also, teenagers need to recognize how much value they have to bring to the table and to take themselves a little bit more seriously. But aside from that, I think this is like an ongoing problem that we all need to try to like work and find solutions for, because besides those really vague, unhelpful answers, I don't have anything like directly in front of me besides, just trusting each other and seeing the value that each age group brings to the table, I guess.
Right. I think it's a really fundamental change that we as a society need to evaluate.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of many times throughout history where youth could feel like they were in an environment of possibility,
Mm-hmm.
where anything could be done. I mean, cross-generational conflict is a theme that's recurred throughout all of history. Mm-hmm. We see it a lot today. There's like baby boomers, millennials, Gen Z, Gen X. There's so much conflict and mixed feelings there, and there's a lot of stuff that gets mixed up and not heard and all that mix. Yeah, like you were saying, it's a big question, and it's scary.
Right,
Yeah.
but even back in the civil rights movements, I mean, teenagers that were involved in segregated schools, there were tons of times when people would walk out and like make changes in their community and stand up for what was right.
Mm-hmm.
So how can we as teenagers use our power to facilitate change in our communities?
You just do it. Like, no, seriously. Marches are big. Are that's an example like you had right there. Like marches, walk-ins, walkouts, and I don't know, like just finding causes that you genuinely believe in and finding out the best thing for that cause.
Right.
And going for it, and like carefully looking at all the different data involved in those causes, and then just going for it.
Yeah.
Because the nice thing about being a teenager is that, at least right now in our society, consequences are very limited. Like,
Right.
you are not likely to get shot for
I hope not.
like distributing pamphlets or whatever. Like, if we were in a more intense political environment, I would not be advising you to just,
Right.
because chances are you'll get a little bit too involved in some causes, and you'll make some mistakes and maybe do some things that you might regret later down the road. But honestly, like, so this is the time to do that. This is the time to do that and just
Right.
go for it. And that's how you figure out what causes you do want to support and how you want to be treated and how you want to facilitate change.
Right.
And I think those strong beliefs and mistakes are almost even more important at a younger age, because those mistakes that you're learning from, you'll bring to the table when you're older, and you can have even more influence in government and your community. Yeah, now is the time to experiment and try new things and think new things.
Right. And that just goes straight back to what we were talking about earlier when we were talking about the definition, that it's, it's having this mindset of, I'm going to do this thing that's right, but then going out and doing it. Part of it is that action, that is what's empowering, is going out and doing what you think is right because you think it's right. But I also like what you were saying, Michael, with you're going to fail. But you're going to learn from it, and you're going to bring that to the table later. I'm really curious because in schools, we have a bunch of extracurricular things that we do, right?
Mm-hmm.
As hey, this podcast is an extracurricular thing. I don't get paid for this, guys.
We're being exploited.
But where for teenagers do we draw that line so that we're not taken advantage of? Because I personally, I do so many extracurricular things. I was in the musical. I don't want to know how many hours I spent on that. I'm the yearbook editor-in-chief. Again, I don't want to know how much time, but I don't get paid for any of that. So is that, because it's a learning experience, is that still being taken advantage because I'm putting all that work into it? Or am I being paid by the learning experience? And how do I tell that difference?
Whew. Just coming out with all the big, honestly, I think you're probably being taken advantage of a little bit, but so is literally everyone in the school system.
Right.
Yeah.
You're right. You're right.
But I still feel like it's valuable, and if you feel like it's something that is genuinely helping you grow as a person, because keep in mind that the people who are facilitating those plays and the events in the yearbook and whatever, they're not getting compensated either.
Right.
Like, and like this, and that's the big thing to look at is, are the people who are in charge, are they getting paid for what I'm doing?
Oof, that's rough.
So, and if the answer is no, then chances are like it's just the experience.
I do like that answer because I think that there is so much value in so many of the extracurricular things that I have done and that I've seen other people do, I would not for the world change so many of the things I've been a part of that I have put hours into that have made my bank account so low because I haven't been working, But in that sense, though, I mean, the higher-ups that stay after school for rehearsals or that, spend a lot of time on the weekends helping me edit and doing things like that, they don't get paid either for that extra time. DeBono, who is sitting here next to me, he doesn't get paid for being here, And so I think that that's really interesting to look at who's getting compensated in what way. And if we're just all getting compensated in the way of learning and getting an experience and helping other people learn things and sharing the great conversation of ideas with people, that in itself can be a compensation and a reward that is, heck, could be worth more than...
Hands down.
Money,
There's a lot of things that I do and that I'm involved with that I do not get paid for at all, or I forget to get paid for. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I'm like struggling to make it as an author right now, is because I hand out books like candy and like business cards. Like, no, you don't need it. Just take it. I just want you to read it. I will pay you to read it. Please read my book. So yeah, like experiences are really valuable.
Right.
But I've also been thinking about, because that question that you asked, like how do you change the world as teenagers and whatever. And I think this is the biggest thing, because like, yeah, there are big things that you can do and you should do if you feel so inclined. But the biggest thing you can do is to just be a good person and treat the people around you with love and kindness and respect. That is the biggest thing. That is how you genuinely change the world, and that's how you make it a better place, because it's not about doing these big things. And I just wish I had understood that. And I didn't. It's about being good. So just be good.
That's so interesting. I think we're seeing like these two kind of contrasting, but two ideas that work together, is of having that goodness and striving to be kind and good and respectful, and then also taking action. And I think those work in tandem to make a better world.
Yeah. Sometimes you need to like not go be doing stuff, because you guys are doing so much. You guys are doing so much, and sometimes the best thing for you is to just like not. Yeah.
Oh, that hurts.
Yeah.
Oh goodness. No, but that's true. Is finding that state of balance and that state of peace. What I think, going back to something you said earlier, is that like being empowered and that type of thing is also being at peace with yourself, and being okay with the fact that, like, I do stuff and I exist and I'm imperfect. I don't know if I've mentioned it on the podcast before, but from a discussion that I had recently, that happiness is being at peace with your own imperfections. And that's something that I've started just kind of, like, having in my brain all the time, which is great because it's a good thing. But I feel like that really goes into empowerment, though, is you have to be at peace with the fact that you can't change the world in a night. Like, heck, maybe you can, I don't know. But most people do not change the world in a night. And that's okay, because there are plenty of things that you can do if you're taking action, if you're doing your best to be good, if you are trying to respect the people around you and trying to communicate, your feelings and communicate to other people, creating a safe environment, things like that, that there are so many small things that you can do and say, I am at peace with myself, I'm at peace with my environment, and I'm just going to do what I can.
That reminds me a lot of, towards the beginning of our conversation, we kind of talked about how, like, as a teenager, you mentioned that you felt kind of pressured to do everything because you were always told that you can do everything. I think, naturally that's a part of empowerment. But I think equally so, empowerment is recognizing that you don't have to do everything.
Right.
Correct.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can do anything, but you can't do everything.
Yeah. You are important, and you are changing the world by just existing. You don't have to do anything. Like, you are still, that doesn't change your value, that doesn't change your worth. If you are existing, you are enough.
Right.
Yeah, there's not a qualifier for being important or valuable.
Amen.
No.
Self-worth, guys.
Yeah.
No, but it's true. Like, the world would not be the same without every single individual that's in it right now. Every person has impact on other people. Like we talked about going back in time earlier, but every single small action that every single person makes changes the world. And in that sense, us right now in our own time, because we can't time travel, not that I know of at least, maybe, I don't know.
I have news for you.
No, but we as individuals, every single thing that we do, even if it's smiling at someone, even if it's, holding the door open for someone, if it's being on a podcast and saying, hey guys, what's up? And then talking about cool stuff, every single thing that every single person does makes a difference.
And it's important even if it doesn't.
Right.
It's important even if it doesn't.
Right.
Like, everything is valuable and it has inherent valuable and deserves to be protected, even if it does not affect.
Right. It doesn't have to be big.
Yeah,
it doesn't have to, I don't have to post on social media and then have 10,000 people's lives changed. In fact, I don't know if I want that. That sounds scary. But the fact that, I exist today and I did a thing, just the fact that I exist and the fact that I did a thing is what's important.
Yeah.
Every thought, every decision I make makes an impact on me, even if it's not other people.
Right.
And that influences my capacity
And
to
empowers
do good
you.
and be good.
That's really interesting. I love how it's coming back to the self. We've talked about a lot of things that you can do for other people and do in your communities, but every time we talk about this type of thing on the podcast or just in today's episode or just a lot of the times when I have discussions with people, anyways, it comes back to the self. And it's not that, I have to do this big, great thing. It's that I do things and they impact me and I exist and that's a good thing. And it doesn't have to be more complicated than that. It doesn't have to be this whole big scheme of wow, big project, whoa, gonna change the world, ooh. It can just be that, yeah, I exist today. I put on shoes today.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. I made it that far. And heck, sometimes it is those big things that you're doing. Sometimes it's, I got accepted to college, that type of thing. But it doesn't have to be a big thing. Every individual is important no matter what.
I spilled sesame sauce on my pants today.
Oh, goodness. And we still love you for it. It brightens someone's day, and actually, that brings a really interesting point, because there are so many things that us as individuals, especially in today's society, I feel like so many people have so much anxiety and so much sadness and so much in their life,
Amen.
Amen and hallelujah. No, but a lot of the time we disempower ourselves because we say, oh, there's this thing that I did and it's embarrassing and now I'm a horrible person because of it. And maybe you're embarrassed by spilling sesame sauce water stuff on your pants,
Maybe a little
and now
bit.
your knee smells like rice. Maybe that
Not
makes you feel
saying.
sad, but we're all laughing because of it and we're all happy because of it. So it's really interesting. Focus on perspective, because sometimes your own personal perspective of things that you're doing or things that other people are doing isn't necessarily reality, and it isn't necessarily the big picture.
All right, so we've discussed a lot of different challenges to teenage empowerment. This is kind of a blanket question, but I was kind of wondering what you would say is the single greatest challenge to teenage empowerment today.
Ooh.
Single greatest challenge to teenage empowerment is just, I think it's the fact that no one knows what they're doing. Teenagers don't know what they're doing. Adults still don't know what we're doing at all. So it's just the fact that, nobody knows anything. And we're just kind of figuring it out as we go. And we're all wrong and we're all lost together. But I also think it's both the greatest challenge and the greatest advantage.
I love that. We're all lost together, but that's okay.
Yeah.
This has been a really great episode. I've loved being able to discuss with both of you. We're so grateful for Michael to be on as our guest host, and then also Quiana as our guest. So good.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be a part of the podcast. This is super awesome. It's a fantastic discussion and episode today.
Heck yeah. At the end of every episode, we have a challenge and a takeaway. So, Michael, if you would be willing to give us a takeaway that you got from this episode.
There's so much. I have had a fire hose of information going into me. I think the takeaway I had from it is that every single one of us has so much potential, has so much influence that we don't even realize. And along with that potential and influence comes our intrinsic value. There's so much that we can do, but that doesn't mean that we have to do everything. We do so much in every second of every day that is infinitely important in ways that not everyone can understand.
Yeah.
Good stuff. There you go.
Okay.
And Quiana, if you could give us our challenge.
All right. Your challenge today, dear listeners, is to do something today because you like it and because you want to,
Yes.
and for no other reason.
I love that.
That's
That is so
amazing.
good.
I'm
gonna
going to do that.
Hey!
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Quiana. It was so wonderful discussing with you. I have a lot to take home and think about and unpack. This has been such a great discussion. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, and thanks so much for joining us, everyone. If you have any questions or want to get involved and support the podcast, please reach out through our Instagram at The Paradigm Pod, or you can email us at podcast@paradigmhigh.org. And to support us, please rate us on iTunes. It really helps to spread the great conversation of ideas and just our reach to everybody. And thanks again. We will attach in the description a link to Quiana's book so you can go check that out. And thanks again, everybody. Don't forget to engage in the great conversation of ideas.